This is the Film Grinders Podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Hauka. Me, Jacob Hall, and David Hollinshead talk all things NFL, mock drafts, prospect profiles, free agency, and everything else going on in the pro football world. We all hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Film Grinders Podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Hauka, here with Jake Hall. This is our first episode. We're really excited to get going here, guys. A little bit about myself right away. I'm Nick Hauka. I have coached football since I was 17 years old. I've been a defensive coordinator at the high school ranks here in Canada since 2018. I played high school ball. I was a quarterback in DB. And I made the decision not to pursue playing collegiately or at the junior football level, as I'm 5'8" and 160 pounds soaking wet. So I thought coaching would be a better path for me, and it has been so far. And I'm here with Jake. Jake, you want to tell a little bit about your story?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I also big football fan. I played throughout high school and then into college for a season with Simon Fraser, and then just being quite big and, getting beat up, I decided it was kind of time to maybe do something different with my mental health and my physical health. So I always stayed around the game. I coached a little bit in high school as well, and have just been involved with Simon Fraser, mostly of the D2 ranks, and now unfortunately no longer a program, but I'm a big football fan, and I'm watching every single Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, whenever they have games.
So yeah, we might be washed now as players and coaches, but the passion is still there for the game. And with the free time when we're not at work, we're looking at the coaches' film, we're looking at everything. We just have fun evaluating players and just following everything NFL. So we're going to do lots of things on this podcast. We're going to do mock drafts. We're going to do player evaluations, top 10 lists. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to do. Today, we're going to go through day one of free agency. Also, we're going to have another member of our podcast, David Hollinshead. He was a fairly high-level high school quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, former head coach, and he played at the junior football ranks. For those of you that don't know how the Canadian system works, it's essentially JUCO, but there's no school. You're just kind of playing junior football. So he played for the Langley Rams for that. So he will also join us eventually, not today, because he's busy also being an actor. But he will eventually join us. So we're going to start today with free agency. We're going to start kind of with something that happened over the weekend, but with a signing earlier today kind of came to fruition finally. The Seattle Seahawks trading Geno Smith for a third-round pick. Jake, what were your initial thoughts when that happened?
Yeah, I think the elephant in the room is that I'm a big Raider fan, so my position on this is not going to be necessarily unbiased. However, I think if you do look at it strictly from the asset that you gave up, which was a third-round pick, that wasn't even their own third-round pick that they got through the Devontae Adams trade. And you shore up your quarterback position, a position that has been an absolute disaster, train wreck for them, even later into the Derek Carr years as well. Like, they just haven't had great quarterback play. So to get someone who definitely has moments of panic with his red zone play, interceptions as well, and turnovers, I think it's a solid move because, again, the price is cheap. He has the connection with Pete Carroll, and I think he is a good quarterback. I think he's a really good quarterback who is probably not a great quarterback. If we had to put him on a scale, I would say he's probably 15 to 12. I don't know if you would agree with that, Nick, but I think he's kind of in that range. And to get competent quarterback play and good quarterback play is not an easy thing to do necessarily in the NFL. So I think he's going to show better in Vegas with a better offensive line. Brock Bowers is there. Maybe they, make a splash play at 6 for Ashton Genty or Ted McMillan. Jacoby Myers is already there. Chip Kelly's the coach. Like, I think it's shaping up to be a pretty good offseason for the Raiders. But I would just say, again, like, if you watch the offensive line of the Seattle Seahawks, they did him no favors for the last 2 years, and he's made some really electric plays, and I think his numbers should be better. But given the fact that he has a man in his face every 2 seconds, it's going to be kind of hard for him to perform the way that he should have.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think for the Raiders, this is a great move. I think if you look at where they're drafting at number 6, this is not a good quarterback class, right? This is Cam Ward. And then if you listen to any NFL scout or insider right now, they're saying teams are having Shedeur way below that. And he's the next tier. And then after that, it's kind of a crapshoot, right? So I think this is a great move for them. You're giving up a 3rd-round pick for a guy that you know is going to give you solid quarterback play. He's not going to make a ton of mistakes. I know he had a little bit of an interception problem last year, but I think you can correlate that to, as you said, not very good protection by the Seahawks and trying to force things, right? So I like Geno. I think he's a really solid quarterback, and I think in the right situation, you can play winning football with him, right? So I think that's a really good move for them. I want to talk a little bit about what Seattle, from the Seattle perspective of things now. This for them doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I think the one thing you can kind of hold on to is that they offered Geno the same deal that they just gave Sam Darnold to sign. So in that way, yes, it does make sense. Initially, everyone was kind of going, what are you doing? And if they didn't sign Darnold, I think that would have been very problematic for them. Yeah. Especially with the quarterback situation with free agency and the draft, right? But they managed to pull through with that. One interesting thing I saw is Honest NFL on Twitter. He's a great follow. He's a former, I believe, Philadelphia front office member. He kind of keeps his identity under wraps, but really good follow, like really good analytical approach for him. He was saying that with the new offensive coordinator coming in for the Seahawks, Clint Kubiak, who was just
the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah. He is a big, tight split guy, right? So the receivers are aligned tighter to the offensive tackles. He has the term that numbers are lava. And Sam Darnold did a lot of that with the Vikings, right? Well, Geno likes to spread things out to see the field more. So that potentially could have been there. I think it's a fairly lateral move by them. The contract, I guess, makes sense. But what did you think about that?
Yeah, I think we knew that there was another shoe to fall when they traded Geno, because especially it caught me off guard because the scarcity of quarterbacks in this league that are available, right? We're talking about like Justin Fields. We're talking about, trying to get Matthew Stafford, and that obviously didn't result in anything, right? So it's like there's not a lot of quarterbacks available that are young, which Sam Darnold is. I kind of agree with you. I think it's sort of a lateral move. I don't know. Like it's also interesting because they traded DK Metcalf. So it's like you're not really setting him up for a ton of success unless that's the route they want to take in the first round, maybe a receiver or an offensive lineman, more likely because they need offensive line help. But I thought it was a bit of a curious move because you have the consistency with Geno, the continuity, and seemingly teammates loved him. The reaction when he was traded was kind of a little solemn from Seattle. I guess I wonder as well, like, is this a John Schneider move? Because from all intents and purposes, like Mike Macdonald liked him. Again, the players liked him. It seems like John Schneider just hasn't ever fully bought into Geno, despite the last 3 years. They brought in Drew Lock to compete with Geno, and that was kind of a dud. So I don't know. I think it's probably more of a John Schneider thing than a Mike Macdonald thing. But I guess, again, $10 million difference. Like, is that enough for you to move off your captain and your guy? And I guess the age also does factor in. So I'm not as much of a Darnold hater as a lot of people. I think he's shown potential, but it's going to look a lot different in Minnesota or in Seattle than it did in Minnesota. He's not going to have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones. He's not going to have O'Connell as his coach, right? Like, so it's going to be a big difference for him going to Seattle.
Yeah, and like you mentioned too, we'll talk about DK Metcalf here a little bit. I know like Seattle didn't want to extend him, and that's the reason they moved him. You're telling me the best you can do is a second round pick for DK Metcalf? Like this guy, this is the number one receiver in the league. He might not be. Go on, yeah.
I was just going to say when they went for a first and a third, that was my thought is they'll probably meet in the middle, but a second does seem like I kind of wondered if no other team was interested because I felt like, well, the Raiders would be a good example. They just got Geno Smith. I think the Chargers were in on him as well, but obviously they opted for someone different, as we'll probably talk about. But yeah, surprising.
Yeah, like crazy to me. Like this is a legit playmaker, right? Even a future first round pick for him. This is a legit number one. He's not at the upper echelon of number ones, but like he is a step or two below. He's a very good player. So I thought that was really surprising. And like, I don't know if that sets Sam Darnold up for success now. Like you have JSN, and then I think your next receiver is Jake Bobo. Like that's your number two right now.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Right. So that, because Lockett's not under contract
released
right now.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah.
So, yeah, they must see something in the draft. I think this is a solid receiver core, but there's no like perennial superstar, especially where they're picking. So, interesting decision by them. Let's see how that pans out. We'll move on now to Myles Garrett with the Cleveland Browns. This is pretty shocking. This, like, he was gone, right? This was kind of, for months, everyone was saying, oh, Myles Garrett's gone. He's sick of the Browns organization. This is a team that has really mismanaged their talent. There's the Baker Mayfield situation, the signing of Deshaun Watson. This is a franchise that historically has been really bad for a long time, other than 2 playoff appearances a couple years ago. And I'm shocked that they were able to re-sign this guy. What did you think about it? Because I was honestly at a loss for words when I saw this.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed as if it wasn't a money issue, right? Like they were going to throw him the bag and he didn't want to be a part of it. Which, like, can you blame him a little bit? Like, no, and it's the same with like Max Crosby. Like you can understand why these guys get a little tired of this organization. I guess my question is, should they have traded him? And I only say that because they're at such a deficit at the quarterback position, right? With, what is going to happen with Deshaun Watson? He's not even going to be able to play this year regardless, or it doesn't look like it. So if Cam Ward goes 1, then you're stuck with, I guess, Shedeur Sanders. But is that really the path you want to go? Like, if I'm them, I blow it up. Just blow it up completely. Like, get as many picks as you can for Myles Garrett, as much as, he is still obviously like such an impact player and one of the elite players in the league. But I don't know, like it might make sense to think elsewhere instead of giving him, I think it's like, is it 35 million a year or 40 million a year?
I believe so.
It's the highest non-quarterback contract, right? So this is a pretty significant contract. And I just wonder if they should have just torn it to the studs, because I feel like they've never really done that necessarily, right? Like the last couple of years, they've kind of been the same team without a quarterback. Well, this is what happens.
Yeah, like that organization, just so many blunders, right? Like last year, you have Joe Flacco, not last year, but the previous year, Joe Flacco leads you to a playoff spot where they almost win too. He unraveled a little bit in that game, but you had a formula: power run, play action with Joe Flacco. It was working for you. You let go of him. You completely changed your mentality on the offensive side of the ball, spread things out and try to play hero ball with Deshaun Watson, which does not work. And now you're just kind of stuck in this low to mid-tier team that has good talent on this defensive side of the ball, especially with Myles Garrett, with JOK, and Denzel Ward too, obviously. And you're just, like I agree with you. They got to blow it up. Like this team is not going anywhere fast. You're in a competitive division. It's not looking really good for them. Now, the Rams made a really interesting move coming off kind of a surprising year where teams kind of thought this team was done, especially with injuries early to Cooper Kupp, who just got released, and Puka Nacua. They somehow managed to find a way to make the playoffs. And Jake, me and you have talked about this a lot. Like, they were a drive away from beating the Eagles. They're there.
I'm so close. And for them to get Stafford back as well has been a huge, I think, like, massive impact on them. I can't imagine the Rams next year without Stafford.
Now, they signed Devontae Adams. One of the problems with this team's offensive core for Stafford is there's a lack of speed there. They just re-signed Tutu Atwell, who's a speedster, but again, like, Tutu Atwell's like, what, 5'7", 165? Do you trust that guy to be a true number 3? Probably not. And also, Nakua's your slot guy. He's the guy working out of the slot. I can't really see Tutu holding up outside. He's a pure vertical receiver. Now you bring in Devontae Adams, who is still really good and a great route runner, but he was never fast to begin with, and now he's starting to lose his step. What do you, like, I don't know about this move for the Rams. I think if this is 3 years ago, I'm perfectly fine with it, but this is a guy that's starting to lose it, and you're paying him big money now. It's only 2 years, but I don't know if this is a fit.
Yeah, I think I will take the other side of it. I wonder, like, the other aspect of this that's important is Cooper Kupp, right? So Cooper Kupp and Devontae Adams have a similar cap hit. I think it's like $20 million or something.
Yeah.
So Cooper Kupp, it hasn't happened yet, but I think he will be released. I doubt a trade will formalize for him. So you're talking about him filling, I guess, that Cooper Kupp role. And Kupp was real good for like a good portion of the start of the season, and then he just trailed off and was not being used. I think he had an ankle sprain or something about halfway through the year, and then he just never got better. He missed a couple of weeks and just wasn't that guy anymore. Not to say he can't next year, but he's an older player as well. I think with Devontae, you're still seeing those like nasty releases. You're still seeing him get open. Yep. I know he had that crazy game against Jacksonville towards the end of the year where he had like 200 yards or whatever. Almost won me my fantasy matchup, but I think Adams can still get open. I think he can still create separation. And with Sean McVay, like, that to me is the cool part. I'm like, what are they going to do with him and Nacua? Like, Nacua is kind of like a Deebo Samuel with more catch radius. Like, he's so unique in the way that he's able to create after the catch. So I think, like, for Devontae Adams, like, you're going to have to figure out how to stop this defense or stop this team. Who are you going to bracket? Like, who are you going to shift all your coverages to? And I think Devontae is going to do really well in this offense. And I still think he has enough to give where it's a plus move for them.
That's fair. I can definitely see it working. They need one more guy though. I think they need one more guy because Tutu's not a number 3. Like, you need another guy. And like we did, as you said, like Devontae, he did have some good games for the Jets. That was kind of a disaster, that organization this year, right? With the whole Aaron Rodgers fiasco and everything. But as we saw against the Jaguars, who I am a fan of, unfortunately, if I could go back in time, I'd punch my 9-year-old self in the face for deciding to be a fan of them. But I am a Jaguars fan, and we saw like he ripped them up pretty good. Now, I will say our secondary isn't very good, and we had the worst safety play in the league, arguably. But anyway.
Thank you for listening to the Film Grinders podcast. Make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. From me and the guys, thank you. We'll see you next time.